Right now, gun legislation clearing its first Senate hurdle, but the question is, now what? We're going to try to break it down and tell you not just what happened, but what's to come. And next, the race for City Hall 2013. We'll hear from Democratic candidate Bill de Blasio on everything from Anthony Weiner's prospects to a new attack ad, all aimed at Christine Quinn. And later, unprocessed justice. Many rape victims, thousands, assume that after their attack, the wheels of justice are turning and that the police are hard at work trying to put the attackers behind bars, but sometimes, all too often, crucial evidence just sits on a shelf collecting dust. We're going to speak with a rape victim who's trying to bring attackers to justice. That's coming up. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French. Thanks for joining us this Friday evening, April 12th.
On this vote, the yeas are 68, the nays are 31. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion is agreed to.
Translation, all that drama and attention yesterday over the vote you just heard. It's a vote that did nothing to advance gun control legislation, except it just begins the formal debate over background checks in the U.S. Senate. Now, that vote, which saw a handful of Republicans join Democratic senators, and some Democrats, by the way, going with Republicans in voting against this, all it was to reject the GOP filibuster. That means that the debate, it's going to begin in earnest in the Senate next Tuesday, and that despite all the attention that we all paid to yesterday's vote, nothing has been approved by lawmakers. Now, what will lawmakers be debating, you ask? Well, the bill, as it stands right now, it would make background checks near universal. It would provide more money for school safety, and it would beef up the rules against gun trafficking. But of course, the debate will not be that simple. Senators are going to debate changes to the bill, more filibusters. They could come along the way, and there is no guarantee that the bill is either going to get a final up or down vote, although it looks likely it'll happen at least in the Senate. And those proposed changes that will be debated, they could push the bill into either direction, making the thing stronger here if you believe in gun control, or weaker. Now, gun control advocates on the left say that they're going to try for measures like an assault weapons ban, a ban on extended ammo clips, and just about everything else. But trust me, the likelihood of that's between slim and none. But gun advocates on the right, they're also going to try to change the bill that we heard discussed yesterday and make it more permissive on gun laws from the Toomey-Manchin compromise that would actually weaken background checks to a provision that would force states like New York, for example, to have to follow the concealed carry laws of states like Oklahoma, even one that would label every gun restriction as a violation of the Second Amendment. So the whole translation is, if you got all fired up about yesterday, slow your roll. There is a lot to come here in the Senate, and then if it even gets through to the House. But let's say the bill somehow gets through the first roll, gets through the Senate. Then it would have to go to the Republican-controlled House, where it could and probably would be changed again or ignored and never even debated at all, or it could be debated but never even get voted on. Now, when asked whether or not he'd make sure that a gun bill that passed the Senate would just get an up or down vote in the House, John Boehner, all he would tell reporters was this.
As I've made clear, any bill that passes the Senate, we're going to review it. In the meantime, we're going to continue to have hearings looking at the source of violence in our country, but I want to wait and see what actually passes over in the Senate.
Okay. Translation, we'll see. All right, let's bring in our panel on this. Tom Doherty, former advisor to Governor George Pataki, now a partner with Mercury National Public Affairs firm. Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Read the tea leaves, Andrew. Yesterday, promising, or from what we heard in the House already on this thing's going to be an uphill climb.
Well, I think it's if you want greater gun control, you're more hopeful after yesterday's vote than you were before. Obviously, it's past the first filibuster. But as for anything more substantive than what we've heard getting passed, I'm not any more hopeful about that. Whether it's in the Senate or the House, this thing still has a lot of hurdles to clear.
Dominic, what's the biggest red flag you see up ahead?
The fact that some Republican senators are worried about their own backs, about their own reelection, and that the NRA is going to red flag them and get in the way. And so we may end up seeing nothing at the end of the day because of the Republican Party.
You laugh.
Well, I do laugh because the reason that we have moved forward to this point is that a whole host of Republicans said we're not going to filibuster. We're not going to allow a filibuster. Let's move forward in the process. And even some Republicans who have said, I may not vote for the ultimate bill, but I want this to go forward for a debate.
But is
in
that
fact,
really what happened, Tom? Or did the families from Newtown, were they forced to go to Washington and embarrass these lawmakers, and thus...
So what about the 2 Democratic senators who are up for re-election this year, who joined, you didn't mention them.
They were up for re-election,
But you didn't mention them.
Well,
it's only the Republicans you mentioned.
No, it's not only
the bottom
Republicans.
line is this, is that there is no way that what we're going to have here at the end of the day is, and the House is going to go along with it ultimately, because you're going to have enough Democrats and you're going to have enough Republicans who are smart enough to see the light here. 90% of Americans want universal background checks. There is no rhyme or reason, any common sense says that you shouldn't be checked before you go buy a gun. That's what's going to happen here.
Do you think people, on both sides, but do you think the politicians who are afraid to vote for this are overestimating the downside come election day for them or come primary day for them?
No, you know, Richard, what I don't get.
I think the fear is a little bit over-exaggerated on their end that the NRA is really going to kill them if they vote for something that 90% of the general public, maybe not their district, but 90% of the general public wants.
I think that the NRA has a job to do for its membership, okay, whether we agree with it or disagree with it, okay? But at the end of this process is that Republicans have to always worry about the far right extreme of their party putting up a candidate in a district that's not Westchester County, that's not New York City, that's sitting in the middle of Idaho, where the politics is much different. But when you have a 90% number,
and 75% of the NRA membership want it.
Right. So the point is that at the end, when Boehner says, let me take a look at the bill, at the end, the one thing that comes out of this is that we're going to have more universal background checks, and that's a very good thing. And everybody will take credit for that.
I hope you're right, because for me, part of it has been, yes, the lobbying arm, but also how fact and fiction in this conversation have blended together, especially by those who are trying to stop gun control. And Tom said it, the biggest number is 90%. 9 out of 10 Americans, that's all Americans, say, yeah, you know what, universal background check's a good idea, and 3 out of 4 members of the NRA agree with it. But despite that, you listen carefully to what some reservations that people have, the claims that background checks just a path to a giant gun registry that will lead to the government confiscating everybody's guns.
Background checks could lead to the government coming in and taking away people's legally obtained weapons. What about that concern? Is that legitimate, the concern that so many people have?
It's absolutely, totally false, and anybody that's saying that is just basically scaring or lying to people. Read it for yourself. Don't let somebody scare you.